She stepped off the transport bus, her boots crunching on the gravel of the Navy SEAL training base. The air was crisp, filled with the sharp scent of salt water and metal from nearby ships. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness in her chest. For years, she had dreamed of this moment, of proving herself among the toughest and most elite warriors in the world. Yet, the first thing she noticed wasn't the massive obstacle courses or the sound of commands being barked. It was the quiet looks of dismissal from those around her. The other trainees were already gathered in small groups, laughing, joking, and sizing each other up. She could feel their eyes briefly glance at her before quickly looking away. She wasn't sure if it was curiosity or doubt, but one thing was clear. She didn't fit into their immediate expectations. Some whispered among themselves, casting small smirks in her direction, while others acted as if she wasn't even there. She was invisible. That feeling stung, but she refused to let it break her. She took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was there. She had worked for this moment her entire life, waking up before dawn for years to train, pushing her body to limits most people wouldn't dare, and studying the strategies and skills of elite forces. She had endured pain, doubt, and even ridicule to reach this point. Now, she was determined to show that she belonged, even if no one else recognized it yet. Her first interaction was with the instructors, tough, experienced veterans who looked like they had been through every type of challenge imaginable. They didn't smile. They didn't welcome anyone. Their job was not to make her feel comfortable. It was to test her, push her, and see if she could survive the mental and physical trials ahead. When she introduced herself, there was a polite nod. Nothing more. No encouragement. No special attention, just a brief acknowledgement of her presence. She could feel a few eyes from the other trainees following the interaction, some with subtle surprise that she had actually made it here. That only added to the tension. She was both underestimated and watched. The first day's schedule was overwhelming. From the moment she stepped on the base, she was thrown into a whirlwind of introductions, briefings, and quick assessments. She had to learn the layout of the base, understand safety procedures, and quickly memorize names and ranks, while keeping up with physically fit men and women who already had a presence that made them seem unbeatable. Every glance, every small action, made her acutely aware of how different her experience was from everyone else. They laughed at jokes she didn't understand yet. They ran drills at a pace that made her lungs burn, and still she kept going. During the first physical assessment, she quickly noticed how dismissive some of the trainees were. When she struggled with a task just a little longer than the rest, they muttered under their breath or exchanged smirks. She could have let it get to her. She could have decided that maybe she didn't belong. But instead, she did what she always did. She focused. Every step she took, every movement, she reminded herself that this wasn't about what others thought. It was about proving to herself that she could do it. Lunch was another test of patience and social awareness. The dining hall was crowded, with everyone pairing off in tight-knit groups that had already formed over small moments of camaraderie. She walked in quietly, tried to find a place at a table, and realized that every seat was either full or subtly claimed by others who didn't want her there. For a moment, a pang of isolation hit her. She could have left or sat alone quietly, but she reminded herself that this was just another part of the challenge. Acceptance, she realized, would come only after she proved her worth, not before. Despite all this, she found small moments of encouragement from within. She noticed that while the others may not have respected her yet, she had something stronger than their temporary judgment. Her own confidence in her ability to endure and excel. Every step she took across the base, every drill she completed, every instruction she followed carefully, was a quiet defiance against the doubt surrounding her. It wasn't loud or boastful. It was steady, consistent, and powerful in its own way. By the end of the day, her body ached in ways she hadn't experienced before. Her muscles burned, her hands were blistered, and her mind was exhausted. But underneath that exhaustion was a quiet satisfaction. She had survived her first day at SEAL training, a day that could have broken someone else's spirit. More importantly, she had survived it without compromising who she was or what she stood for. She was still standing, still moving forward, and still focused on the goal that had brought her here. As night fell, she looked out over the base, the sun casting long shadows across the concrete and steel. The other trainees may have overlooked her, laughed at her, or doubted her abilities, but she had already proven something important to herself, that determination, resilience, and quiet confidence could be more powerful than recognition or applause. She went to bed that night knowing that the real challenge had only just begun. But she was ready. She had arrived, she had been overlooked, and yet, she had already begun the journey to prove that she was not to be underestimated. The second day at the Navy SEAL training base was even more challenging than the first. She had survived the initial shock of arrival, but now the real struggle began. Every morning, the loud, sharp voice of the instructors echoed across the training grounds, commanding attention and demanding perfection. The other trainees seemed to move with confidence, their bodies strong, their faces hardened by experience or a sense of belonging. She, on the other hand, felt every ounce of her inexperience, every muscle ache, and every small doubt creeping in. From the very first exercise, it became clear that being overlooked by her peers wasn't going to make things easier. During team drills, she noticed how decisions were made quickly, and her suggestions were often ignored. Even when she spoke up with a solid plan or pointed out a better way to approach the challenge, her voice seemed to vanish in the air. Some teammates barely looked at her, while others exchanged subtle smirks or rolled their eyes. It was frustrating, but she knew complaining would do nothing. The SEAL world didn't reward excuses. It rewarded results. Physical challenges were punishing. Long runs in the hot sun left her lungs burning and sweat streaming down her face. Obstacle courses tested her strength, balance, and endurance to the absolute limit. During one exercise, she had to climb a steep wall while carrying a heavy load. Her hands were raw, her fingers blistered, but she refused to let go. Around her, others sped past, and some even mocked her for taking extra seconds. Yet she kept climbing, one careful movement at a time, focusing on the wall in front of her rather than the whispers behind her. Mental pressure was equally brutal. Instructors constantly tested the trainee's ability to think clearly under stress. During one session, they gave complex commands that required split-second decision-making. She had to process instructions quickly, coordinate with teammates, and act without hesitation. The stress was almost overwhelming, and for a moment, she felt panic creeping in. But she breathed deeply, reminded herself of her training, and executed the tasks with precision. The few times she succeeded quietly, she noticed glances of surprise from some teammates, but no praise, no acknowledgement. She realized early on that respect had to be earned through consistency, not occasional wins. Isolation was another challenge she had to face. During breaks, others clustered together, sharing stories and forming bonds that she was not part of. The laughter and camaraderie around her only emphasized her outsider status. She could have felt defeated, but instead, she used the quiet moments to focus on her goals. While others bonded socially, she bonded with herself, with her determination, and with the vision of becoming one of the elite few who could withstand this training. Her focus was her own, and that focus became her strength. Despite the constant challenges, small victories kept her going. During a timed swimming drill, she surprised herself by finishing in one of the top times. No one celebrated her achievement, but she felt a surge of quiet pride. It wasn't about recognition. It was about proving to herself that she belonged in this world of elite warriors. Every push-up, every pull-up, every step across the rough terrain was a statement to herself. She would not be broken, she would not be overlooked, and she would not give up. The social dynamics were perhaps the hardest part. Her peers' disregard for her presence could have been crushing, but she refused to let it define her. When a teammate intentionally left her out of a task, she didn't retaliate. Instead, she completed the task alone, ensuring it was done perfectly. Every act of silent perseverance made her stronger, sharper, and more determined. It became clear to her that being overlooked could be turned into an advantage. While others focused on appearances or quick victories, she was quietly mastering every skill, refining her technique, and building an inner strength that no one could see at first glance. By the end of the day, exhaustion weighed heavily on her. Her body ached, her mind was drained, and yet, she felt an unshakable sense of purpose. While others celebrated small victories or complained about the intensity of training, she had already faced her own battles. She had endured the mockery, the dismissals, and the physical strain and survived. She realized that strength was not only in muscles or endurance but in the ability to persist, to remain focused, and to keep moving forward even when no one else noticed or cared. That night, as she lay in the barracks, she reflected on the day's events. She thought about the moments when her voice was ignored, the exercises that tested her limits, and the subtle glances of doubt from her peers. But she also thought about the quiet victories, the determination that had kept her going, and the small personal achievements that no one could take away. She understood that this journey was about much more than recognition. It was about inner resilience, about proving to herself that she could rise above doubt and adversity. By the time she drifted off to sleep, she knew something important. Being overlooked was not a weakness. It was an opportunity. It was an opportunity to grow stronger, to work harder, and to prepare for the moment when her efforts would finally be recognized. And deep down, she knew that the real test wasn't just about physical challenges. It was about patience, persistence, and the courage to keep going even when everyone else failed to see her value. After days of being overlooked and underestimated, she began to notice small changes in herself. The relentless training, the whispers of doubt from her peers, and the constant pressure from instructors had started to shape her into something stronger. She had already survived the first 2 days of hellish routines, and now it was time to prove that she could do more than just endure. She could lead. The first real opportunity came during a navigation exercise. The instructors divided the trainees into teams, each tasked with finding checkpoints spread across rough, unfamiliar terrain. While most trainees immediately started running without a clear plan, she paused. She looked at the map, studied the terrain, and thought carefully about the most efficient route. Her teammates were restless, impatient, and quick to dismiss her suggestions. "Just follow me," one said, waving her off. But she stayed calm, confident in her knowledge and instincts. As the team moved through the course, mistakes began to happen. Trainees took wrong turns, wasted energy, and argued over directions. Her plan, which had seemed unnecessary at first, began to prove its value. She quietly guided her team, suggesting subtle adjustments and rerouting them when paths became confusing. Slowly, they began to realize that she knew what she was doing. Some cast surprised glances at her, realizing that the girl they had ignored had the skill to lead them effectively. Yet, despite her success, the acknowledgement was minimal. No one applauded. No one called her a leader. That was fine with her. She wasn't training for praise. The navigation exercise tested more than just physical endurance. It tested mental clarity, decision-making, and the ability to stay calm under stress. Her peers were struggling to manage the exhaustion and the heat, but she kept a steady pace, both physically and mentally. She offered encouragement when necessary, helped others recover when they stumbled, and ensured that the team moved efficiently toward the checkpoints. Each step she took reinforced her quiet confidence. She was not the fastest, nor the loudest, but she was proving that consistency and skill could outperform arrogance and impatience. When they finally reached the last checkpoint, her team had arrived ahead of most others. It was a moment of quiet triumph. A few teammates looked at her with new respect, though they didn't say it aloud. The instructors made brief notes, observing each trainee, but she could tell from their glances that she had stood out. It wasn't a dramatic victory or a moment of celebration. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was meaningful. She had led effectively, made sound decisions, and achieved results where others had failed. That was the kind of recognition that mattered most to her. The satisfaction of knowing she had done well, no matter if anyone else noticed. Despite the success, she knew the path ahead would not be easy. The training was relentless, and her peers' skepticism hadn't disappeared completely. Some continued to whisper, some continued to test her patience, and some still ignored her contributions entirely. But she began to notice small signs of change. A teammate who had once dismissed her now occasionally asked for advice. Another who had mocked her methods began to follow her lead quietly. These small acknowledgments were enough to fuel her determination. That night, after returning to the barracks, she reflected on the day's exercise. She thought about the moments when her plan had been ignored, when her patience had been tested, and when her leadership had been challenged. And she thought about the feeling of quiet triumph when her decisions had led the team successfully through the course. She realized that being underestimated had forced her to develop skills she might never have discovered otherwise. It had taught her resilience, patience, and the power of strategic thinking under pressure. She also understood something important about human nature. People are often quick to judge based on appearances, first impressions, or outdated ideas of capability. Being overlooked wasn't a reflection of her worth, it was a reflection of their assumptions. And as long as she stayed focused on her own growth and performance, those assumptions would eventually crumble. The lesson was clear. Respect isn't given. It's earned through consistent action, patience, and quiet strength. By the end of the day, she felt a sense of pride that had nothing to do with praise from others. She had faced doubt, physical strain, and mental challenges, and emerged stronger. The navigation exercise had been more than just a test of skills. It had been a test of character. And she had passed it with quiet determination and intelligence. As she lay in her bunk that night, muscles sore and mind buzzing with reflection, she understood that every small victory was a step toward a larger goal. Recognition would come, but only after consistent effort, discipline, and unwavering focus. She didn't need the cheers or the approval yet. She only needed to stay true to herself, to push forward, and to continue proving, in every small way, that she belonged. The day had shown her that even when overlooked, one could make a difference. Even when others doubted her, she had the power to lead, to inspire, and to succeed. And deep down, she knew that the seeds of respect were being planted, even if no one else saw them yet. In her quiet, determined way, she was building a reputation that could not be ignored, and the journey was only just beginning. The next challenge was the hardest yet. A grueling 72-hour survival exercise had been announced, and it was designed to push every trainee to their absolute limits, physically, mentally, and emotionally. The instructions were simple but terrifying. Navigate through harsh terrain, manage limited supplies, endure extreme fatigue, and complete assigned missions without giving up. The exercise was notorious for breaking even the strongest trainees, and she knew it would test her like nothing before. From the very beginning, the conditions were brutal. The weather was harsh, sun blazing by day, cold and damp at night. The terrain was unforgiving, full of steep hills, dense forests, and rocky paths that threatened to twist an ankle or tear clothing at every step. Supplies were minimal. Small rations of food, limited water, and basic tools. Sleep was almost impossible, as trainees were constantly on alert, moving from one objective to the next. Most of the team was exhausted within hours, their energy sapped by the relentless pace. She too felt the strain. Her muscles burned, blisters formed on her hands, and every step seemed heavier than the last. But she had faced challenges before, and she knew that survival wasn't just about physical strength, it was about mental endurance. She reminded herself to stay calm, take careful steps, and ration her energy. She focused on one task at a time, refusing to let the magnitude of the exercise overwhelm her. While some of her teammates panicked or complained, she kept moving steadily, maintaining a quiet but determined rhythm that carried her through each obstacle. The mental challenge was just as demanding as the physical one. Trainees had to navigate with limited information, make quick decisions under pressure, and remain alert to avoid mistakes that could jeopardize the entire team. She noticed her peers becoming frustrated, arguing over decisions, or losing focus entirely. She stayed composed, quietly analyzing the situation, and making logical choices. When the team hesitated, she offered solutions, not loudly but firmly, and guided them toward a better approach. Her calmness under pressure began to attract attention, though subtly. Some teammates began to rely on her judgment, even if they were reluctant to admit it openly. One of the hardest moments came during a simulated rescue mission. The team was exhausted, morale was low, and mistakes could have cost them the exercise. Several trainees faltered, doubting their ability to succeed. But she stayed focused. She reminded herself that giving up was never an option, that her training, determination, and preparation had brought her this far. She took the lead, directing movements, keeping the group coordinated, and ensuring that everyone stayed on task. Step by step, she led the team to the objective, overcoming obstacles that had seemed insurmountable earlier in the exercise. Through those 72 hours, she experienced every extreme of human endurance. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, fatigue threatened to collapse her body, and doubt occasionally whispered in her mind. Yet she persevered. She discovered inner reserves of strength she hadn't known existed. She learned to endure discomfort without complaint, to keep moving when others faltered, and to maintain clarity when chaos surrounded her. Every small success, making it through a rough patch of terrain, helping a teammate recover, finding the correct checkpoint, reinforced her determination and sense of purpose. By the end of the exercise, most trainees were exhausted beyond comprehension. Some had failed to complete their missions while others barely made it through. She, however, had finished strong. She had navigated the terrain, completed all tasks, and maintained focus and composure throughout. Her quiet determination had not only kept her alive but had ensured the team succeeded as well. For the first time, a few of her peers looked at her with genuine respect. The dismissive whispers had faded, replaced by acknowledgement of her skill, stamina, and leadership. Despite the extreme exhaustion, she felt a quiet satisfaction that went beyond physical achievement. She had survived one of the toughest challenges imaginable, and she had done it on her own terms, without relying on luck or waiting for recognition. She had faced fear, fatigue, and doubt head-on, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident in her abilities. That night, as she lay under the stars, she reflected on what the exercise had taught her. She realized that the hardest challenges often revealed the truest strengths within a person. While others had faltered under pressure, she had discovered resilience, patience, and the power of calm determination. The survival exercise was not just a test of skill, it was a test of character. And she had passed it. She also understood something crucial about being overlooked. While her peers had doubted her abilities, she had quietly proven herself through action rather than words. Recognition might not come immediately, but her capabilities were undeniable. The seeds of respect had been planted, even if no one acknowledged them yet. And more importantly, she had proven to herself that she could endure anything, that her limits were far beyond what she had imagined, and that the judgment of others could never dictate her potential. The 72-hour exercise had changed her. She was no longer just a trainee struggling to be noticed. She had become someone capable of leading, of persevering, and of thriving under extreme pressure. Her confidence had grown, and her presence had begun to quietly command attention. She knew that future challenges would be even tougher, but she was ready. She had survived the worst, and in doing so, she had taken another step toward proving that she belonged among the elite. Just when she thought she had faced the hardest challenges, a new test came that no one could have predicted. During a sudden emergency drill, a simulated hostage rescue, chaos erupted across the training ground. The instructors announced the scenario with sharp, commanding voices, and the trainees had to react immediately. Most of the team froze for a moment, unsure of their roles or how to proceed. Panic was creeping in, and it became clear that some of the assigned leaders were struggling to take control. In that instant, something inside her clicked. She had trained for years to handle pressure, to stay calm when others faltered, and to make decisions in high-stress situations. She didn't wait for instructions or approval. Instead, she assessed the situation quickly, scanning the area for threats, noting where teammates were positioned, and identifying the most efficient way to complete the mission. Without hesitation, she started giving clear, concise directions, making sure everyone knew their role. Her voice was firm but calm, cutting through the noise and confusion around her. At first, some of her teammates resisted. They had been trained to follow certain leaders, and her sudden command caught them off guard. A few murmured complaints, questioning her authority, but she didn't falter. She focused on the mission, guiding them step by step, helping those who hesitated, and keeping the team coordinated. Slowly, her approach began to work. Trainees started to trust her instructions, following her lead with growing confidence. The operation that had seemed doomed a moment ago started to move smoothly. The physical demands of the drill were extreme. She had to navigate through narrow corridors, crawl under obstacles, and carry simulated casualties to safety. Every muscle in her body screamed with exertion, but she refused to stop. She kept checking on her teammates, ensuring no one was left behind, and adjusting strategies as needed. While others were exhausted and distracted, she remained fully aware of the entire situation, anticipating problems before they could arise. Her ability to stay focused under pressure amazed even herself. What made this exercise truly difficult was the unpredictability. Instructors constantly introduced new obstacles, unexpected alarms, sudden shifts in the scenario, and challenges that tested both skill and decision-making. Trainees had to adapt quickly or risk failure. She thrived under these conditions. Every unexpected change was an opportunity to demonstrate her competence, to prove that her calm, strategic approach could succeed where panic and hesitation would fail. By the end of the drill, it was clear that her leadership had saved the exercise. The mission was completed successfully, and the instructors made note of her performance, though the rest of the team was slow to recognize it. Even with the mission accomplished, the response from her peers was minimal. Some avoided eye contact, others whispered quietly, unwilling to openly admit her skill. She had grown used to it by now. Recognition was not her goal. It was the result of consistent performance, patience, and perseverance. She knew that those who mocked or overlooked her would eventually notice her abilities, but that would come in time. For now, the satisfaction of having completed the mission and helped her team succeed was enough. This exercise taught her something important. Leadership was not about being the loudest or the most obvious figure in the room. It was about observing, thinking quickly, and taking action when it mattered most. True leadership earned respect silently, through deeds rather than words. And in this high-pressure scenario, she had proven that she could rise to the occasion, even when no one expected it. After the drill, she took a moment to reflect quietly. She remembered how her peers had initially doubted her, how they had ignored her suggestions, and how they had assumed she would fail under pressure. None of that had mattered when it counted. In the moments that demanded focus, clarity, and courage, she had stepped forward and delivered results. That realization gave her a deep sense of pride, not just in her physical capabilities, but in her mental toughness and ability to inspire action in others, even without seeking their approval. The instructors had watched closely, noting her precise movements, calm demeanor, and ability to manage stress. While her peers may not have fully acknowledged it yet, the higher-ranking officers were beginning to take notice. She had started to build a reputation based not on appearances, rank, or popularity, but on undeniable skill and quiet confidence. Each successful action reinforced the idea that she could handle anything thrown her way. As she rested that evening, she thought about how far she had come. From being overlooked and underestimated to becoming a figure her teammates could rely on in the most extreme situations. She realized that perseverance, focus, and determination were more powerful than any external validation. She had proven to herself, above all else, that she belonged here, capable of handling the toughest challenges with strength, intelligence, and courage. By the end of the day, she understood that the lessons from this exercise would stay with her forever. Success was not about seeking attention. It was about preparation, resilience, and taking decisive action when it mattered most. And she had done exactly that. In the chaos of the hostage rescue drill, she had not only survived, she had led, and her capability had begun to shine quietly, impossible to ignore for those who were paying attention. After weeks of grueling training, the atmosphere on the base began to change, subtly but noticeably. The whispers and dismissive glances from her peers were less frequent, replaced by quiet curiosity and cautious respect. She had proven herself time and time again in exercises, drills, and survival tasks. Yet she remained humble, never flaunting her achievements. Her focus was always on the mission, on the task at hand, and on pushing herself to the limits. This quiet confidence had begun to draw the attention of higher-ranking officers, who valued skill and discipline above all else. One day, the base received an unexpected visit from a 4-star general. The news spread quickly, and the trainees were on high alert. The general was known for his impeccable standards and sharp eye for talent, and his presence caused a ripple of nervous energy across the entire base. Everyone wanted to impress him, and the usual hierarchy of recognition, who was strong, who was popular, who had connections, suddenly became irrelevant. The general's focus was always on performance and capability, and that was exactly where she excelled. When the general arrived, most trainees tried to position themselves in the spotlight. They stood taller, spoke louder, and attempted to showcase their skills in ways they thought would impress. She, on the other hand, continued her training quietly, methodically, without any intention of drawing attention. She maintained her disciplined posture, executed every movement with precision, and focused on her tasks just as she had every day. Her quiet confidence set her apart, even if she wasn't actively seeking recognition. The general's inspection was thorough. He moved from team to team, observing exercises, asking questions, and testing the trainees' knowledge and composure. Most of the attention naturally went to those who were more outspoken or physically impressive, but his keen eye did not miss the subtler qualities: the calm under pressure, the precision of movements, the ability to lead without seeking approval. When he paused near her, he noticed something that others often overlooked: her complete focus, her disciplined form, and the quiet authority she commanded without even speaking. Her peers were surprised. While they scrambled for attention, she remained composed, performing every action flawlessly. Some tried to nudge each other, whispering, "Look at her! She's still standing strong." Others cast glances that mixed admiration with disbelief. They had underestimated her for weeks, assuming her quiet demeanor meant weakness or lack of skill. Now, in front of the highest-ranking officer on the base, her competence was undeniable. The general approached her directly. He observed her for a few moments, watching how she executed a particularly complex maneuver. She didn't falter, she didn't hesitate, and she didn't seek to impress. Her focus was absolute, her movements precise. Without a word, he gave her a nod of approval, and then, to the astonishment of everyone present, he saluted her. The gesture was brief but powerful, an acknowledgement of skill, discipline, and leadership. The other trainees froze, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. For weeks, they had overlooked her, dismissed her abilities, and underestimated her. Now, the respect she had earned quietly and consistently was undeniable. The moment changed the atmosphere on the base. While some peers still struggled with their assumptions, others began to recognize her capabilities. They realized that being outspoken or physically imposing was not the only path to respect. Consistency, focus, and competence mattered just as much, if not more. She had demonstrated that true strength was measured not by words or appearances, but by actions under pressure, skill in execution, and the ability to remain calm when others faltered. Despite the sudden acknowledgement from such a high-ranking officer, she remained humble. She returned the salute with perfect form, holding her posture and composure. She did not seek praise, and she did not allow the recognition to inflate her ego. Instead, she internalized the moment, understanding that her journey was far from over. This was not the end, it was a turning point. Respect had been earned, but it had to be maintained through continued dedication, discipline, and excellence. Later, as she reflected on the encounter, she realized how far she had come. From being ignored and underestimated, she had quietly built a reputation that could not be denied. Her perseverance, resilience, and consistent performance had caught the attention of someone whose judgment mattered immensely. It was a validation of everything she had endured: the long hours of training, the pain, the isolation, and the constant doubt from peers. More than anything, it reinforced the lesson she had been learning all along. Recognition is earned through action, not demand. Respect comes to those who quietly prove themselves over time. That day also marked a subtle shift in her peers' behavior. While some still clung to their old assumptions, others began to approach her differently, listening when she spoke, following her guidance during exercises, and acknowledging her contributions more openly. She noticed it but did not seek to exploit it. Her focus remained on the mission, on her growth, and on pushing herself to achieve even greater competence. By the end of the day, the memory of the salute stayed with her. It was more than a simple gesture. It was the culmination of her hard work, discipline, and quiet determination. She had demonstrated that even when overlooked, a person's abilities could shine when it mattered most. And as she continued her training, she carried that confidence silently, knowing that the path ahead would still be challenging, but also knowing that she had proven her worth to the highest authority on the base. The day of the ceremonial inspection arrived, a moment when every trainee hoped to demonstrate their skills and impress the high-ranking officers observing them. The air was tense, filled with the noise of footsteps, commands, and the soft murmurs of trainees whispering to each other. Everyone wanted to stand out, to be noticed, to prove that they belonged. But she approached the day as she had every other day, focused, calm, and determined to do her best, not for applause, but to show her true capability. As the 4-star general walked through the ranks, the other trainees tried to catch his attention. They straightened their posture, performed movements with extra flair, and positioned themselves where he was most likely to notice. Some spoke loudly when asked questions, hoping their confidence would be seen as leadership. She, however, remained in the background, performing each task with precision, executing every command perfectly, and maintaining the discipline that had become her hallmark. Her quiet efficiency stood out against the more obvious displays of effort by others. The general observed every movement, every reaction, every expression. He didn't respond to bravado or showy gestures. Instead, he focused on competence, control, and composure under scrutiny. As he moved down the line, he finally stopped in front of her. She felt his presence, but she didn't flinch or try to appear more impressive than she already was. She simply held herself steady, executing each task flawlessly. Her eyes met his, calm and confident, and in that moment, the world seemed to pause around her. The other trainees could hardly believe what was happening. They had overlooked her for weeks, dismissed her abilities, and assumed she would remain unnoticed. And yet, here she was, standing out not through noise or showmanship, but through skill, discipline, and quiet authority. The general gave her a nod. Then, in a gesture that stunned everyone, he saluted her. It was brief, but full of meaning, a recognition of her capability, her dedication, and her leadership potential. The room fell silent. Her peers froze, unsure how to react to the acknowledgement they had never thought she would receive. She returned the salute with perfect form, calm and composed. She didn't smile excessively or seek to draw attention to herself. Her respect for the general and the significance of the gesture guided her actions. The moment was not about ego or recognition. It was about acknowledging her journey, the countless hours of training, the endurance, the perseverance, and the quiet strength she had displayed every day. It was the culmination of everything she had worked for, the confirmation that her abilities could no longer be ignored. The effect on her peers was immediate and noticeable. Some of them looked ashamed, realizing they had misjudged her, mocked her, or underestimated her skills. Others watched in awe, seeing for the first time the quiet power of consistent effort and true capability. The dynamic on the base began to shift subtly. Respect, which had been withheld for weeks, was now being earned through her actions rather than demanded. She had set an example not only for what it meant to persevere under pressure, but also for what it meant to lead without seeking validation. After the inspection, trainees whispered to each other, recounting what had just happened. They spoke of her composure, her precision, and the surprising moment when the general saluted her. Some still struggled with their pride, but others began to seek her advice and guidance. Slowly, the social barriers that had kept her isolated began to erode. It wasn't instant, but it was undeniable. Her abilities had begun to command respect in a way that words alone never could. As she reflected on the day, she realized that this moment was the result of countless small victories. Each exercise completed under pressure, each challenge met with determination, and each time she had persevered when overlooked had built toward this recognition. The salute was not a reward for a single act. It was a culmination of her resilience, intelligence, and courage. It was validation that her approach, quiet, consistent, and unwavering, was effective, and that true leadership often comes from actions rather than noise. She also understood an important lesson about life and human nature. Recognition may not come when expected, and it may be delayed, but it eventually follows consistent, focused effort. People who doubt or underestimate others often fail to see the quiet strength developing right in front of them. Her journey was proof that perseverance, discipline, and integrity are more powerful than immediate applause. By the end of the day, she had not only proven her worth to the highest authority on the base but had also inspired those around her. The moment of acknowledgement by the 4-star general had become a symbol, a reminder that no matter how overlooked or underestimated someone may be, consistent effort, skill, and quiet determination can change perceptions and command respect. That evening, as she prepared for the next day's training, she carried a sense of calm confidence with her. She knew that the journey was far from over, and the challenges ahead would continue to test her in ways she could not yet imagine. But she also knew something essential. She had proven herself, not for validation, but for the simple and powerful truth that she was capable, strong, and ready for whatever lay ahead. After the ceremonial inspection, a sense of calm confidence settled over her. The salute from the 4-star general was more than just a gesture. It was an acknowledgement of everything she had endured, every challenge she had faced, and every moment she had quietly proven her strength. It marked a turning point, not just in her training, but in how she was perceived by everyone around her. For weeks, she had been overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. Now, she was seen as a capable, disciplined, and respected trainee. Her peers began to notice subtle changes in themselves as well. Those who had once whispered and laughed began to approach her differently. They listened when she spoke, followed her guidance during exercises, and started to acknowledge her contributions openly. The respect that had been withheld for so long was finally beginning to flow naturally, not because she demanded it, but because she had earned it through consistent action, perseverance, and skill. The transformation was quiet but profound. She had gone from being invisible to being someone who inspired others without trying. Despite the newfound recognition, she remained humble. She understood that respect and achievement were not about ego or external validation. They were about doing the work, pushing through challenges, and maintaining discipline and integrity no matter who was watching. She continued to train as intensely as before, focusing on her physical endurance, tactical skills, and mental sharpness. Every day was another opportunity to improve, and she was determined not to let the moment of recognition become a reason for complacency. The lessons she had learned over the past weeks were clear and deeply ingrained. Being overlooked or underestimated had forced her to develop patience, resilience, and quiet leadership. She had learned that the strongest influence is often silent, that actions speak louder than words, and that perseverance under pressure is more powerful than fleeting attention. The journey had shaped her into someone who could thrive even when others doubted her, and who could inspire others through example rather than demand. Her story began to spread among the trainees. Newcomers were told about the quiet girl who had been ignored, yet had earned the salute of a 4-star general. They heard about how she had led during critical exercises, stayed calm under extreme pressure, and completed tasks with skill and precision when others faltered. Her experience became a lesson in resilience, showing that determination and focus could overcome doubt, mockery, and underestimation. Even those who initially doubted her started to reflect on their own behavior and the assumptions they had made. The instructors also took note of her progress. While they had always observed the trainees closely, her consistent performance, calm decision-making, and leadership in difficult scenarios marked her as someone exceptional. She had shown that she could handle challenges beyond the average trainee, not through brashness or loud demonstrations, but through competence, discipline, and steady determination. This recognition from instructors, combined with the general's salute, confirmed her growing reputation as a capable and dependable member of the team. In the weeks that followed, her influence continued to grow. Trainees looked to her for guidance in exercises, respected her judgment in group decisions, and began to emulate her calm, methodical approach. She had become a symbol of what it meant to earn respect quietly, without demanding it. Her example inspired others to push through their own challenges, to remain disciplined under pressure, and to value consistent effort over fleeting appearances. Her story became more than her own. It became a lesson for anyone facing doubt, mockery, or obstacles on their path. She also reflected on the journey in a personal way. Every challenge, every exercise, every moment of being overlooked had shaped her resilience and strength. She realized that true growth comes not from recognition alone, but from the process of facing adversity, persevering, and staying focused on goals. The salute from the general was a milestone, but the real triumph was in her transformation, her ability to endure, lead, and inspire quietly, no matter who was watching. By the end of her training cycle, she had not only completed some of the toughest exercises with distinction but had also earned a place of respect and influence among her peers. The girl who had once been ignored had become someone who others looked up to, who had proven that skill, determination, and character could command acknowledgement even in the toughest environments. Her journey was a testament to resilience, courage, and the power of consistent effort over time. Looking back, she understood that being overlooked was never a weakness. It had been an opportunity. It had allowed her to develop inner strength, to focus on her growth without distraction, and to demonstrate that quiet competence can often be the most powerful form of leadership. Her story was proof that true ability cannot remain hidden forever, and that respect is earned through actions, perseverance, and integrity rather than loud declarations or fleeting appearances. As she moved forward, the lessons of her journey remained with her. She had learned that challenges could be opportunities, that perseverance could transform doubt into respect, and that leadership often comes from quiet strength rather than overt display. The salute of the 4-star general was a powerful symbol, but the real achievement was in the skills, resilience, and confidence she had cultivated along the way. Her story would continue to inspire others, a reminder that even when overlooked, it is possible to rise above doubt, overcome obstacles, and earn recognition through consistent, disciplined action.